everybody, welcome to Hot Join Heroes, the show where we're just going to be casting a Hot Join match and seeing how it goes. Now, people are still funneling into this game as the match is starting, and looks like John over here is going to be sitting still, so let's change point of view. So, having a look at the map now, looking at the splits, we're on Battle of Kylo. Obviously, we get a Thief from the red team going to cap their home point, and looks like we've got a Thief and a Warrior, possibly, if that guy starts moving again, going up to the midpoint, and then the other two members of the blue team going over to the mansion point. So let's go down onto the midpoint just to see where this fight is taking us. Now let's just jump in here. Now you're going to see a 2v1 in favor of the red team, and if Hayate doesn't want to get onto the point, which he doesn't, it looks like it's going to be going into the favor of the red team immediately, which is actually going to mean that they're going to have the 2-cap at the start, and so they're already starting to pull away in points. And I'm glad I'm going to be putting something over the chat box, because right now the chat is just appalling. It's just it makes me not want to play Hot Join ever again. Alright, so it looks like the fight is basically over at the midpoint just because no one wants to fight in that kind of an outnumbered fight. Having a look over on the red team's home point, which is going to be the mansion, the windmill, we're going to be seeing, who is that? Selling Kinder. Alright, Selling Kinder is going to be sitting on the midpoint, on the home point, trying to keep that in control for his team, or trying to get it in control of his team. He's going to be fighting against Paisman, who is going to be a thief, sitting in stealth after using that Shadow Refuge to just get a little bit of a res off. Sitting in stealth now, trying to get away from the fight, which has allowed Selling Kinder to get into the to get that point capped for his team, which is actually going to be the only point that's capped in favor of his team at the moment. As we see, there's going to be a fight happening off all of the points, which is going to be leading in favor of the red team. Even though they've actually just lost that fight and given points to the red team, to the blue team, they're actually going to be benefiting themselves by pulling away with that 2-cap, regardless of that. Now I see Paisman of the Hood fighting off against Kinder again. It looks like he's come and tried to re-engage Kinder. And now using that Blaze Storm to reflect back some of that longbow damage that Kinder's putting out, being a Hambo warrior. I assume he's Hambo at least. Just having a look, I don't want to be wrong there. No, Greatsword and a longbow, which is still a relatively offensive build. You just don't get the CC that you otherwise would if you're running with a hammer at this point in time. But looks like the red team is rotating over around to the blue team's home point, or to the red team's home point, to get that back, which is going to force Selling Kinder, if he's playing smart, to peel off of that node so that he's not going to be getting killed there. Looks like he still wants to fight for whatever reason, because it's going to be relatively unwise for him at this point in time. Going into the downstate now, which is going to definitely allow the red team to be keeping this point in their favor, as they're literally their entire team, bar one person on the treb, is going to be sitting over there. So having a look at the mansion point where everyone is right now, it looks like the blue team's starting to come over, unless the rest of them are down. There are a couple of players who are sitting around looking at what's happening from the clock tower, but it looks like they're going to be holding this 2-cap for the time being, with Spawn just having a look at what's happening, seeing the red team coming over to the midpoint, not wanting to get killed by the entire, high mind, I guess, of the red team. He's going to be going onto that onto the red team's home point to try and get that decapped and possibly win this fight and cap it in favor of his team again, using a kit build, using the grenade kit and then the toolkit. It's going to be probably a condition-heavy build if we actually have a look at the the abilities that come off with that kind of a build. Just having a look at Spawn's traits and setup. See 6 runes to the undead, which is going to be toughness, condition, damage runes. So as I said, those grenades are going to be putting a lot of pressure onto Vance, who is going to be the Mesmer fighting against Spawn. It looks like this fight's going in favor of Spawn, still sitting comfortably on 6k health, while the Mesmer is trying to kite him and get those illusions out, using that Sword 3 to Sword 2 combo to try and get a little bit of burst on Spawn, who goes into stealth to try and maybe mitigate some of that damage to try and confuse Vance as to where he is, and then using that healing turret to heal himself back up, get some of that regen, which is going to allow him to stay in relatively comfortable amount of health. And Alyssa now coming into the fight and bursting Vance down, which is going to be allowing the blue team to get a couple of extra caps in the favor of their team. But it looks like Paisman, who's that thief we saw before, coming back into the fight, trying to get the res off on Vance, but it's not going to happen because of the nature of thieves. It's going to be very, very squishy. Is Paisman that thief we saw? Yeah, no, sorry, that's just a third person that's coming to the fight now. That's Bastion, who's going to be a guardian sitting on the point. As everyone else is more interested in the fights, not the point, he's actually going to get that point basically back to neutral again. And if this, it depends who gets this spike off first. It looks like it's going to be Paisman getting that spike first on Alyssa, which is going to allow Bastion to get back up out of the down state. Having a look at Bastion's build, we see a Sword Torch build, which means it could be running a condition build, which would be incredibly strange for a Guardian, but I've seen it done before and it can be working relatively well. Vitality Runes, not so much, and Superior Blood, stealing health. It looks like it's going to be a relatively survivable build, more of a balanced build than anything else. So I don't really know what the point of the torch is there. It's not the strongest weapon set unless you want to get heavy condition damage, but that's alright. We don't really mind what other people were running. It is, after all, hot join, so he can run what he wants. Now, it looks like Bastion's going to be fighting out against Selling Kinder, who's going to be that longbow warrior we saw before, putting down a lot of damage along with Ellipsis. He's going to be putting Bastion into the downstate again. Selling Kinder now, after having got the spike, is going to be looking at getting that windmill back for his team, even though it's going to be the far point. He's going to be putting that pressure on the far team's node just to make sure that they're not going to be getting that, getting those points per tick. The scores are relatively close right now, with the red team leading by about 15 points. But depending on the outcome of this fight, it's going to allow one of the teams to get a 2-cap, so it's either going to solidify that lead for the red team, or if this fight goes in favor of the blue team, it's going to be allowing them to catch up to the red team and maybe even put them ahead. So the red team here, focusing again more on the fights and being ranged classes in this fight right now. It actually allowed the blue team to be capping that point for them, which is giving them a couple of extra seconds to catch up. And Selling Kinder is trying to stay on that point as best as possible without, absorbing too much damage from the Mesmer, from the Mesmer and the Necromancer who are in this fight. So both range classes who can just sit around the outside and kite him if they want to, putting too much pressure on him to just be sitting on that point. Having looked back on Kinder's point of view now, it looks like the blue team has actually got 2 members of the red team in the downstate. We've got the Necromancer and the Thief sitting in the downstate. So let's see if Kinder can get one or more of these spikes. If he can get these spikes, it's going to be really putting this fight in the favor of his team, which is going to allow them to probably get this cap back. But as we've seen this fight happening, one of the members of the red team has come down to the mansion, which was the blue team's home point, and they've actually capped that for their team, which is actually giving them the 2-cap to the blue team's 0, allowing them to pull away from this fight a little bit further. Selling Kinder lol now saying nice 1v1. I don't think it was really a 1v1 considering the fact we saw it as a team fight. But now we're going to see Spawn just trying to pull out of that fight as we see 4 members of the red team fighting out on this point. John Crowder just kind of sitting on this point. If he can get Emo out of this point, they might actually be able to neutralize it or get it back to a more neutral state in order to kind of keep this fight from becoming completely stacked in favor of the red team. But it looks like the red team actually now getting control of this point because of the pressure that John was under. He's actually going to have had to been forced into the downstate and then taken out because he was having to move all around the point, which allowed them to get the cap and then get the spike on him, which is going to be unfortunate for the blue team, as it's going to solidify that point for the red team. Although we just saw the blue team being taken, the blue home point getting taken back by the blue team, and then moving over to the mid node. So if they've managed to get that neutralized on the point, but the red team is still going to be ahead at this point by about 140 points, which actually happened during that fight that we were looking at over on the windmill, which is now getting taken back by a member of the blue team. But having a look at this fight right now, we see Mesmetic sitting on this point, making sure it stays neutralized, using Blood Frenzy to absorb some damage as well as get out a little bit of extra DPS. We see a Sword Torch weapon set, which could mean that he's running a Prismatic Understanding build, but after I used the Prestige just there, I didn't see any boons popping up, so that's maybe not, maybe, it could happen. Now we see Alyssa getting taken into the downside and then getting spiked by the red team, which is going to make it a 2 or 3v1, 3v1 or 3v2 now in favor of the red team, which is going to allow them to get this point capped and get a little bit of extra ticks on them. Now we see Vence, who's going to be sitting out on the... Where is Vence? He's on the red team, isn't he? Yeah, he is. We were looking at Vence just there. We saw the engineer, actually, who was Spawn, sitting on the outside, chucking those grenades down, as we were talking about before, to get a little bit of pressure on the Mesmer. That didn't really work for him, as the Mesmer was just sitting there, absorbing the damage, getting that cap in his favor on the midpoint, which has allowed the blue team or the red team to get that 3 cap in favor of their team, and that's going to be really allowing them to pull out of this fight even more. We see 414 to 254, which is going to be really, really bad for the blue team. So unless they can get these points decapped really, really quickly, it's going to look like this is going in favor of the red team. And because there are so many members of the blue team, of the red team here, it's forcing the blue team to stay in this fight, not peeling off. Otherwise, they're just going to be keeping this point capped for sure. But you know, if I were the members of the blue team, I think it'd be wise to pull off to the side nodes, as we can see from here and here. And get those points neutralized, which would allow them to have a 2-cap to at least get some more points back down. And because it's hot join, they're obviously going to be going and trying to get themselves some personal points. But even with the score being the way it is, even if they had done that and they'd done it a little bit sooner, it's going to be too late for them to do that, especially the red team winning this fight on the midpoint just because they had higher numbers. John Crowder still trying to sit around and get some points for his team, but it's not like it's looking like it's going to work as the entire red team's sitting here. So good job to the members of the red team, which is going to be Piesman, Vence, Mesmatic, Bastion, and Emo, and bad luck to the rest of the blue team, but you know, it was still a good effort for the majority of the match. A couple of things let the red team slip away there, but anyway, good job. Thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you next time.